God bless everybody today. It is December 24th of 2023, and we are watching literally the transportation routes through the Middle East shut down. We've had multiple attacks on multiple different areas, and they're also threatening other straits that are going to effectively shut down all transportation through the Middle East. If this happens, you're going to see a huge jump in oil prices, which will push up global inflation, which is going to then reignite the rate hike decision on what Jay's going to have to do, because if inflation moves up, he can't then cut. And so this is going to hyperinflate everything. It's going to put a lot of stress on the banks. It's going to put stress on governments. It's going to put a stress on populations and everything as prices start to move up. And we could see, if this area shuts down and we break into a global regional war, oil could move up to 100 to 25 to 150 or higher a barrel. That would hyperinflate everything. And now we're talking about the third seal. Okay, you're in the birth pains and sorrows. This is about the third seal where hyperinflation is going to take over. I kept throwing that narrative down. Oh, we're in deflation. It's not. If you're in the birth pains and sorrows, you're going to go into hyperinflation. You won't be able to buy a loaf of bread with a day's wages. That's how bad it's going to get based on what Revelation tells us. So you need to go to Revelation 6, look at the third seal, and see exactly how this is playing out on that level. But that horseman, that black horseman, is the third seal, and it is hyperinflation, it's famine, and it's economic collapse all wrapped up together. So what I'm going to show you is that they basically are starting to shut down all of the Middle East corridors through transportation of fuel, grains, and other things. And this is going to cause a real serious problem as we move forward. And I'm guessing that the markets are going to react in the next week or two to all this terrible information. We've had this coalition of up to 20 nations that have come together to try to protect these straits, because they know how valuable they are, and if they shut them down, they're going to have to transport huge amounts of materials around these straits through around continents, and this is a real problem for everybody. But the area that they're trying to protect is vast, okay? And the attacks are coming from multiple different areas and through drones and missiles and all kinds of different things. They're boarding ships, doing all kinds of things. So it's really hard to counteract all these different things in all these different areas. And I'm going to show you on the map just what's being affected and why this is going to cause a problem into the future. So it says here already, we just put this coalition together, and because there's so many attacks in so many different places, they can't police the whole area. It's impossible. So it says here, cracks form in the new naval coalition. Drone strike spreads basically fear in the Indian Ocean. Okay? And they're talking about, as you move forward, we're going to see another article. It's going to affect another area as this starts to get more involved and ramp these attacks up in these bodies of water over in the Middle East. It's going to tentatively just shut everything down. So they have this Operation Prosperity Guardian, the American-led coalition to defend shipping through the Red Sea, through these different straits, Gulf of Aden, from the Houthi attacks. But now we have different fronts opening up in two other areas, the Indian Ocean and another area we're going to just talk about here in a second. At the same time, the latest rash of drone strikes on commercial vessels appears to have spread far from the Yemen shoulders to the waters off of India. Well, now they're talking about a third area as we go forward. It indicates a total of 20 countries have agreed to take part in the multinational naval security coalition, according to the Pentagon earlier this week, and some of those participants don't want to be named. One of the biggest issues is that of those 20, only a fraction will supply actual ships or other major assets to help in the cause. So they're putting their name out there. They're giving you a little bit of background support, but in general, a lot of these guys aren't going to put themselves and their people in harm's way. They're going to force us to do that and a few other countries. In fact, many are just sending a handful of personnel um, or technical people, which won't really be in harm's way, or they'll be in a position to where they might be on a ship that might be impacted, but in general, they're not going to be impacted. This is especially problematic now that Spain, Italy, and France have rejected the U.S. demand for their vessels fall under U.S. Navy command while deployed as part of the security operation. So I just wanted you to understand that this is happening. This is breaking down quickly. This is going to change all your shipping routes. This is going to bring the cost of shipping containers up. I've heard that shipping container costs went from about $2,000 to $10,000. That might go up more, and because you're moving containers around continents and it takes, let's say, 25% longer to get your containers around these areas, you're basically removing 25% of the fleet, because those containers are being used for a longer period of time, and we only have so many containers and ships that move freight and oil and different things through these areas. And so by doing that, they're raising the price, which raises the per piece price on each of those ships for each of the commodity or item that you're buying. And then on top of that, they're moving the ships around longer journeys. So that's adding time, and it's shrinking the amount of ships that can actually be mobilized, because it takes longer to get these ships to those locations. Talk about that third front in a second, but I want to show you this article. A tanker was hit off the Indian coast by a drone from Iran. Now this is important because this is the first time Iran has been basically named as the culprit for this attack. And so Iran is starting to show their head. The United States is at least acknowledging that Iran is part of this problem. And so we had this chemical tanker inside the Indian Ocean was hit by a drone launched from Iran on Saturday, the U.S. military says. And that's extremely important because it was actually launched from Iran, not from the Houthis or a different area. And so that's extremely important, because we need to understand that Iran is starting to get into this war and becoming more visible. And the last leg that will shut down everything, because there's strategic points that they're actually doing this to, is the Strait of Gibraltar. This is extremely important that they would reach out this far to shut down this area around the Mediterranean Sea over by Spain and Morocco. So that's a long way from Iran, and that would basically shut down everything that goes into the Middle East, at least from the west, the south, or the east, because nothing's going to get through there if there's missiles being launched. And this is going to force all shipping companies to basically rethink and recalibrate. And that's another thing. These shipping companies, because they have to get their freight on time, they're working long hours to try to go through this logistics to figure out how to get their stuff to people, and that it's going to take longer, and that they're charging them 4 times more for freight, and it's a real problem. And so as we move forward, this is going to shut down these areas. I'm not going to get into this article too much. I just wanted you to understand that they are talking about the Straits of Gibraltar. And so why is that important? Because if you shut down the Strait of Gibraltar, which is here between Monaco and Spain, and you shut down the Gulf of Aden through the Red Sea and through the Suez, through here, and now you're hitting areas over by India, which is affecting the Persian Gulf, you've basically locked down this whole area here, which is that whole section that brings any freight into this area up and through here, which they're trying to starve out Israel. This is a blockade on a massive level that cannot be easily counteracted by even a 20 ship coalition when they can fly one drone over there and hit a ship, or they can board ships through these rogue ships that are floating around in these oceans. These oceans are huge. It's really hard to keep track of all these guys. You know, think about smuggling and different things and how hard it is to control that. Well, you're having the same issues here in this entry point, and in this entry point, and in this entry point, and this entry point also is shutting down this entry point or exits. That's the other thing. Not only are they not bringing in anything, they're not moving or exporting anything out of these areas either. Now, this one we haven't talked that much about, the Persian Gulf, because Iran pretty much controls it. And now that they're attacking India Ocean down in the Arabian Sea, down in through here, nothing's going to get through this area, okay? And nothing's going to get through this area. And there's not a lot of movement north out of these areas, okay? So they're basically locking down everything at this point. And so you're going to watch this massive hyperinflation occur. So if you are in the birth pains and sorrows, you're watching seals break in front of you. Jesus is standing in heaven. He has the 7 sealed scroll in his hand, and he is literally breaking seals as we speak this moment. Now, I've speculated, which is a new concept given to me by inspiration, that Gog of Ezekiel is Erdogan. Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39 is Erdogan, but he is also the white horseman, or the first seal of Revelation, and he will go forth and conquer, and to conquering. And so I'm tired of hearing about how this isn't a conquering horseman. It tells you right here he's a conquering horseman, not this guy that comes out and tries to do all these other things. He's a warrior. Okay, he's going to conquer a quarter of the planet based on the first 6 seals. This white horseman's going to come out, and he's going to bring forth the other 3 seals that come forward with him. Okay, the red horseman, which is pieces taken from the earth. So with this white horseman comes the second horseman, the red horseman, where he takes peace from the earth and he brings a great sword with him, because we're going into a war, a seals war. The third beast basically is the black horseman, and he has balances in his hand. And he basically tells you hyperinflation is coming, because he tells you a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And he says he will not hurt the oil or the wine, probably because we're going to put ourselves out of our misery with the wine, and oil is going to go up in price, and so it's not going to be affected to where demand's going to be really high, because the price is going to be extreme, and we're going to walk into a stagnation period of total destruction as people are getting laid off after the first of the year, and we're already watching those layoffs happen. Then you have a 4th seal that comes out, which is a pale horseman, and I talked about this. Death and hell follow him. That's the bottomless pit to his destruction on the 6th seal, and power is given unto them, these horsemen up here, the first 3 horsemen. Power is given unto them over 4th part of the earth, to kill by sword, which is Gog, and hunger, and death and the beasts of the earth. Then we see the martyrs from this war reaching out to God, asking when they're going to get basically avenged for their death, because he talks about the avenging of their blood and how he's going to give them a white robe, and they're going to basically rest until all their people get there, which are people from Great Tribulation and the other people that die in this process of getting to the rapture. Now, we've talked about how there's two different events there, and how I believe the people from Great Tribulation that are raptured see the millennial, but anyone that dies before the rapture is only lifted and taken up to the great white throne and then judged, and then they get the eternity, as it says in Revelation 20. And there is a process there that if you don't make it to the seventh trumpet, you're not going to see the millennial. And so it's extremely important that we get people to the seventh trumpet. But this is extremely important because what he's indicating is that when these people are given their robes, he then avenges them through the sixth seal and the destruction of Gog and all those armies of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And then if you go to Daniel 7:24, it indicates that 10 nations form first. That's that Ezekiel 38:39. Daniel 8 happens first. Iran is absorbed into Ezekiel 38:39. Those 10 nations are destroyed, as it indicates in Daniel 7:24. And then a residue rises up of 4 regions, and then little horn comes out and then capitulates 3 other regions and forms into a beast region or kingdom at the end, with an antichrist sitting on it. I'll say, okay, so then you have the sixth seal, which is the destruction of those 10 nations prior to the forming of the residue of the 4 regions, which basically turns into a beast kingdom. And we see that destruction, and this is a global earthquake event, which I believe is coming up in January or February. And this is extremely important because it will affect the ring of fire, volcanoes, earthquakes all over the world. He indicates that all men will feel this event, all animals will feel it, everything will shake, mountains and islands will move from their places, and people will hope that rocks fall on them because they know that basically the wrath of the Lamb has come. And this wrath is the wrath of Jesus, the Lamb, not the wrath of the Father, which is Revelation 15 and 16, which are the 7 bowls. And it clearly tells you that is the wrath of God. So we're only in the seals and the birth pains. We're not in the bowls phase, which is the very end. And if you're in the bowls phase, then you probably screwed up because you weren't raptured on the 7th trumpet and you're still stuck here. And so hopefully there is a way you can repent at that time and still gain the ability to be judged in the white throne judgment and see your name actually in the book of life, so you can gain to eternity and not have it blotted out. And this is how important this all is now. Whether your name will be placed in the book of life and you will gain either access to eternity or not. And if you're raptured on the 7th trumpet, you immediately go into the millennial, because you're with Jesus and God at that very moment in time, and you will spend 1,000 years with him. But the people that die prior to that, they don't rise. None of those people rise until Revelation 20. So it's important that we get you the 7th seal so we can see you in the 1,000-year millennial and become a teacher to the masses in eternity. That's how important this is. So God bless everybody. You find the open door. This is breaking down. You go out and buy your supplies before hyperinflation hits, and the markets are probably going to start to get really rough because they're going to realize that hyperinflation is not going away and Jay's not going to be able to cut, and this is going to cause all kinds of problems. And if Jay does cut, it's because it's destruction and we've lost this battle. God bless and be safe out there.